Howdy and welcome to today's demo. We're going to be talking about Nutanix Unified Storage and Nutanix Data Lens. The brunt of this demo is going to be on Data Lens because that's really the feature set we're talking about, our compliance capabilities, ransomware protection capabilities, restore capabilities, and the additional analytics and the observability we give to your data. That's all in that part of the platform. But it would be amiss if I didn't go over the foundation, the ground floor, and that would be our unified storage platform, namely files and objects capabilities. So we're one of the few solutions that offer all of this in one management plane, one storage fabric, etc. So we have a Prism Central, pretty standard for a Nutanix environment, right? We're going to manage multiple environments and clusters and services through this cloud-like management plane. So we're going to hit our hamburger menu. We're going to go down to Files. It's going to show us our file server view. We're going to select a file server. We're going to use this primary. Click on Manage. We're now going to be greeted with this view, which is in Prism Element, where we can see, the installed file services and some things of that nature. But it's really this files console that's going to give us the bread and butter. From here, I'll be able to do things like see metrics and performance of the file server, data, what features and capabilities are enabled. So smart tiering for one to tier off to an S3 target, file server health. Do I have our files analytics tool installed and running? In this specific example, I don't, but we would, especially for Data Lens, we would funnel that up. Share level protection, self-service restore, antivirus. You can see what we have turned on and turned off. Also, what shares we have enabled by usage, and I can change how I'm viewing those. I can also start to drill into more performance data. What are my capacities, storage utilized over time? What is my performance, latency, throughput, IOPS, etc. of the file services? And what are the file servers themselves doing? If I need to start looking at scaling them up, scaling them out, I can see that visibility from here. If I needed to scale the file servers, we'd go back to this other view, select the file server, click on Update, and scale in up or down the file server VMs from here if I need to add resources to them or add file server VMs. From here, I can also manage the shares. So I've got 2 shares here. I can go click on Add New Share, go through the workflow to add a share. Do I want to have a max size or not? What protocol am I serving up? If I'm using multi-protocol for both, what share type, standard versus distributed. So basically, do I want to distribute the top level folders across all the file server VMs or just have one file server VM serve up an individual share? Self-service restore enablement. Do I need to block certain file types, etc.? I can do that from here when I create the share. If I go under data management, I can see our protection status. So what we see here is I have protection domain base enabled, meaning I have one cluster failing over to another one. So my file server is going to be, I'll have file services running on both ends, and I'll fail over from the primary to the secondary, all or nothing. Smart DR is a different approach. It's a per share level replication that allows me to specify per share what file server it's replicating to. The primary will be read-write. The destination will be read-only. Those writes will be acknowledged on both. And if I need to fail over, it's just flipping the switch on which one is read-write. And we'll also manage DNS. So we'll be able to change how DNS behaves, or points, sorry. So you don't have to redo your file paths or your share paths. You can just flip DNS and everybody gets to where they need to go in that example. Do I have smart tiering turned on? Yes or no? We'll get to that in the data lens component. But you can see here, I can see all the health things I need to of the file server. And I can also start to change some of the configuration things. So if I need to go change any of the networking, for example, if I need to change my ICAP server for antivirus scanning, like all that is done within this files console. Manage roles. It's role management, y'all. So we can specify what level of access is given to both REST API access, so anything you're doing programmatically, or your admins and what level access they need to have. So we have various roles for that. Block file types, yay. So I just wanted to showcase this because this is kind of where everything starts, is that unified storage platform. And again, it's going to feed up to Data Lens. And now we will pivot to the Data Lens demo where you're really going to get into the weeds of the business outcome-based feature set. Welcome to a demo of Nutanix Data Lens, brought to you by Nutanix Unified Storage. So at this point, you've probably had discussions with your sales team regarding the capabilities of unified storage, and you're interested in taking those feature set and those capabilities a step further. So that's where Data Lens steps in. Cool name, right? So just want to show you where it all begins. So you've subscribed to Data Lens through your sales team. You would then log into my.nutanix.com and go down to the list where it says Cloud Services. You can see I've got a few things here. We're going to click on Nutanix Data Lens. Now, I work here. My view is a little bit different, but yours is going to say launch or set up a trial. So we're going to pretend I've got subscription. I've already clicked launch. I'm now going to be greeted with a view like this. I'm actually going to be greeted with a view like this. Sorry, I had to get back to my global view. So the first thing you're going to see is we've got this kind of high-level view of my entire storage environment. This is, again, data services. So I can see things like anomalies, what have we detected across the services that we might want to dig into, ransomware threats that we might be interested in diving into further, total capacities, amount of files, shares, and data types. And then at the bottom here, I've got a listing of the various file servers that we are monitoring with Data Lens. If you're using Nutanix Unified Storage or files or objects, namely, you would just make sure Pulse is enabled on that environment. And if it is, then we should see it here ready to go, and it'll start feeding that data up to Data Lens to make sense of it. If you have a Dell EMC, Isilon, or PowerScale environment, I can click the Add File Server button and follow this workflow to manually install an agent on an agent VM and pull that data over and feed it up to the Data Lens platform. So now what are we going to do? Well, I got a couple options here. I can click the hamburger menu, not a whole lot, until I go to other data sources. I can search for a specific file server, or I can see them in my list here, or I can also select them from our handy dandy dashboard. Just click through. So I want to kind of approach things from analyze, detect, protect, restore. And at the very end, we'll talk about cost saving capabilities with smart tiering. So that's our capability to move data from the file server to an S3 target and give you visibility on what the cost for the data is in each location. So we'll get to that at the end. So following that life cycle, what do we get that helps us analyze our data? Well, we get this dashboard right here to start. So I can see things like my data growth trends over time. Something was removed here and then added back later. I can see my data summary by type, hot, warm, and cold. This is access pattern based information. I can see permissions monitoring, what kind of folders do I have with what level of permissions? Do I need to drill in? Do I need to see if these full controls need to be full controls right here? Distribution by type. So again, what type of data do I have? And I can also add additional data types to this. So for geology environments or oil and gas environments, where in my past we'd have SegWi files, they're kind of a weird extension. I would add that extension and then I would know how much of those types exist in my environment. Active users, who is doing what? Top access files, who is accessing what, or what is being accessed, sorry. And then file operations. This is really important because this is going to tie into our anomaly detection part of Analyze. So those file operations, do I have renames? Do I have deletes? Do I have permissions changes? Do I have any kind of bulk changes that I need to be aware of? We're going to see those here, and we can click and drill into any one of these headings. So for example, we'll go look at permission denied file blocking. This is permissions being blocked because we thought the activity was anomalous, and we blocked these users from accessing these shares. We'll get into that more in a minute. If I go to this data trend growth, part of analyzing that data and understanding what I'm doing, we give you another neat capability. So for those of you familiar with our Prism Central environment, our management plane, one of our capabilities is giving you capacity forecasting. You plug in a new workload, it's going to tell you what's going to happen over time, or it'll just monitor the information as we see it and tell you when you're going to run out of what resource. We're doing the same thing here, or similar thing with the file storage. If my access patterns or my growth patterns remain the same over the next 6 months, we expect this consumption to take place at that period of time. And again, I can go all the way to a year. So we give you some idea of how much you're going to consume over time. Audit trails. Let's analyze a user's activity. Let's go pick on whoever I come up in a wildcard list. Let's go pick on Dave. This is Dave's activity over the last 30 days. And I can change the date range. I can drill into what files has he written in the last 7 days. And I can start to see that activity and make sense of it. And it's all captured in an audit log, and I can export this audit log as well. So if I need to turn it over to auditors, there it is. It's ready to go. So this will help you see and get into more detail of what the end user is doing. Should they be doing it? Do we need to have a talk with them, etc., by drilling into that information. The other thing we do to help with your analysis of the data is anomaly detection. And anomaly detection is start to pivot a little bit over into the detect side of things, because this is where we are going to use access patterns and things that don't quite match up. So these top users, are they accessing something in a way that they're not normally accessing things? Are they doing something that is out of their normal access behavior? Same thing for folders. So I have some folders being accessed in a way or changed in a way that is not indicative of normal day-to-day operations. And what type of anomalies are these? So I've got create, permission denied, permission changes. So let's go set an anomaly rule. Let's say I want to see anything that has been blocked by the file blocking engine. I want to go to an account of 10 and minimum operation percent. 100% of those 10, run it every hour, go. If that trips that threshold, we're going to notify this distribution list, and you're going to be notified on that activity. So you can get ahead of the curve and see if that's something you need to take action on. We take this capability even a step further, but we're going to get to that in a minute, because part of Analyze is permissions monitoring. This is something that is relatively new to the platform. I'm a big fan of this capability. It would allow me back in my day as a IT director to remove some other products from my system, because I could do it all here. And I'm already making sense of the data, access patterns, anomalies, capacities, trend analysis. Let's add permission control or permission monitoring to that, so I have better control of what's going on. The idea is I want my data to be protected, but I have to make sure it's appropriately accessible. So I can see here I've got shares by distribution risk level. We'll get to that in a minute. Change events, how many changes are happening over what period of time. Permission denials, is somebody trying to get to something they're not supposed to, or do I have some ransomware on my network that is going through someone's account and really trying to see what it can get a hold of? Those are the types of things that we're going to give you visibility to. So let's say I just want to see what are all my folders with full control, because that's usually something pretty dangerous if it's not used appropriately. Here's a listing of all of those directories. I can export this as well to put into Excel, the most handy tool ever created, to make sense of that a little bit further, or if I want to create a report out of it. Well, let's go even further. If I go share distribution by risk level, this is something that's interesting, because now we're going to assign a risk score to the directories based off of these trends. What do we see that we need to be, cognizant of? Full folders with control points, with full control, without admin access. So that's interesting, because maybe if there's no admin on that directory or somebody with that right, and something were to change all the permissions and change ownership and we had no way back in, that might be a bad day. So we can keep an eye on these things. And again, we can change our time slice here. Nothing. It's a demo environment, y'all. Bear with me. But you get the idea here, right? I can see I've got a score, and I might want to reduce that score by making the appropriate changes to these shares and these permission chains. We also break it down by high, medium, low if you want to filter. So make it easy for you. So it's a pretty cool thing with that level of strength. And we can also see it here at the share level. I can see what users have what level access within a share, which will help me make sense again if I'm trying to put Sarbanes-Oxley controls in place, for example. I might want to make sure these financial directories or anything that is material has the appropriate controls, and I can prove it. Here you go. You can prove it, and give you that visibility to go make those changes. And then the risk breakdown, what we saw in a previous screen. If I go to users and groups, we can actually start to see the number of members in a group, which is nice. I can see the group. Let's go pick on administrators. I can see their effective access at the group level across these listed shares that they have access to. So again, it's going to give me better visibility and control over what those permissions are, so I can further protect our data or your data. Now we're making sense of things, right? We've seen how we can visualize the data and what it's doing and its capacity trends and who has access to what anomalies might trigger something I need to be aware of. We've seen how to give you that capability. What do we do with it? Ransomware protection. Now we're getting into protect, right? So ransomware, a little bit of both, a little bit of detect, a little bit of protect. And the idea here is, with those anomalies, once they're triggered and something has happened that we need to look into, we're going to block that user session. So you can see at the bottom here, I have, well, at the top, I have these threats, right? I've got these impacted shares, these users. Here's my 4 latest threats. But at the bottom, I've got these blocked entities. So I've blocked these 3 IP addresses and these 4 users and these 5 operation types. File renames with a signature we don't really recognize. So interesting. Now we're going to do things two ways for your ransomware protection. We're going to look at up to currently about 4,500 rounding up signatures. I can also update the signature list. I can block certain things, like if there's a signature I know I want to pass through, that might be false positive. But we were always updating the signature list as well as part of the platform. So if something hits that block file signature list, boom, blocked. The other is the anomalies that I mentioned before. So those two things are working together to determine what action we're going to take. So we can say that this guy had restricted access to a couple shares. Let's go pick on administrator. If I click on view details, we're going to go, I can block or unblock these users. So for example, if this guy here is false positive or he actually needs access to it, unblock this user. Go. So we can unblock the users, which might be important. We can also do it by the IP address level. But if I wanted to see the threats and start to, actually do something with the threat itself, I can now drill in and see, again, same information, but laid out a little bit differently. And I can now view the files that are impacted. Now we offer a couple different ways to recover from this. So the user is still blocked. I need to put the data back. First level is manual. If I want to restore just the file, I can follow this workflow, and it's a script. So I can follow this script or this manual workflow and put the file back by reaching into a snapshot and pulling it back and putting it where it belongs manually. The other thing I can do is if I go to this impacted shares, I can click recover from snapshot. So let's go look at our NFS Gen 3. When we recover him, this is going to be the last known good. So when we block something, we are going to take another snapshot just in case. And then we can now recover the entire share back to a known good state using this mechanism. And again, if we've got with automation tools, we can automate this workflow. So we've got a couple different ways to do that. There's also the self-service restore. So if I go back here, you can see that self-service enablement is only enabled on a few shares. So let's go manage recovery settings. Let's see, our NFS Gen 3 that we're picking on did not have recovery enabled. Now it is. It'll go through the workflow, it'll enable self-service restore, and we can now offer that as a way for people to go back through and get that data back. So we've now taken a foundational approach to protecting your environment. So there's a lot of post-activity players on the market, various security companies that do file cleaning and scanning and remediation and recovery as well, but we're offering it from the foundation. So if we can give you better visibility and better protection from these zero-day activities by using that anomaly detection, we've now strengthened your footprint holistically. And now we've given you the ability to recover really quickly because snapshots are fast and get the data back to a known good state while giving you control over who's blocked and unblocked. So you can do further forensics or analysis or whatever steps you need to take to get that user or laptop or whatever back to a healthy state. Let's go to reports. Reports is technically an analyze category. I understand that, but it's report, so I saved it for toward the end of the fun stuff. So we've got a bunch of canned reports and things, but let's go create one. Let's say I want to see folders that have been deleted in the last 7 days. Run. Cool. Let's say I want to add a filter and I want to say show it to me within a specific share name. Sure. So you can generate that. We get a preview. Now this is demo, so it's a little wonky, but bear with me. We can also generate a report and we can schedule a report. So if you want to create scheduled reports that run as they need to run, that is something we can do. Also, if you want to just generate it now, get the report in hand and give it to your security team or whoever, your compliance team, whoever needs it, you can do that too. Schedule reports can also be sent via email. Lastly, let's go back to the top here. We've talked about protecting the environment, analyzing the environment, giving you more capabilities across that data management lifecycle: analyze, detect, protect, remediate, or restore. Let's get some cost control in here because let's throw some more good stuff at it. One of the things that customers run into a lot, right, is I've got this high performance storage environment. It's doing all the things. And I've got data there that doesn't need to live there. Maybe it's way too old. Maybe it's archived and it doesn't need to be there at all because it won't be accessed unless there's a reason to restore it, right? Backups. We don't need that to tie up our hot storage. That might be high dollar. So we approach it from a tiering capability. I want to tier that information to an S3 target, get better control over what that data is costing the company based on where it lives. So if I go to this edit cost model, you can see here I've got a couple figures here. My on-premise is $80 per terabyte. My tiered storage is $50. Maybe it's less than that. Maybe it's, maybe it's $40 because I got a really good deal. Update it, save it. Cool. Now the tiering engine itself. Again, this is demo, so it's not plugged into anything. I'm just showing you how it works. But way it's going to work is you pick an S3 compatible target. This can be a Wasabi, it can be Nutanix Objects, it can be Amazon S3. Pick your flavor of S3. We'll say Glacier, for example. One of their cheap and deep ones. You can then point it to that. We're then going to set two other things. We're going to set a capacity threshold, and then we're going to set our tiering policy. So capacity threshold is going to be when it's a percentage of the storage. It would probably be more like a 50% or 30 or whatever, but for demo, I'll keep it like 5. We can tell it to manually tier, or I can say on this schedule, start the tiering. So custom window each day on a schedule, go. It's going to start to tier that data off to your location of choice. Next is a tiering policy. Now, tiering policy is going to work in conjunction with the threshold. If it's data older than a period of time, this is set to 5 days, but let's say, namely, maybe it's 1 year. If it's older than a year, move it. Once you hit that capacity threshold on my storage, it's going to start to move that information based on the schedule you set and the threshold you set. Get it off, get it out. What about recall? Let's say an end user is in File Explorer accessing a file and it turns out it was tiered. Well, they're going to access it as a read off of that environment. But if they start to access it over a period of time, let's say 3 times in 7 days, then I want you to start to pull it home. At any point in time, if I need to manually tier or manually recall that data back, I can click on manual recall and it'll start to pull it back. Now this tiering policy is going to be per file server. So each file server will have its own tiering policy. So you can see I'm under this file server 1, child 3, AFS, yada, yada, yada. It would be applicable to this one. I can have multiples, but it would be per file server in that respect. And again, over here, I can also edit the cost model again from this view. So that is Data Lens. quite a comprehensive tool to illustrate your data, what your data's behavior is, what your user behavior is, who has access to that data, what weird things might be happening with that data that I need to take action on, protecting that data from the ground floor up, and then giving us a life cycle to manage where that data lives. So again, it's a comprehensive data management lifecycle tool. So thank you for sticking with me for my demo. Hopefully that answered some questions and gave you some light bulb moments. Feel free to reach out to your sales team for more information. And thank you and have a good day.